Dr. K. Paranivelu, Professor at the Center for Environmental Studies and Director of Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management, Anna University, Chennai. He obtained his PhD degree from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, Chennai. He worked as project officer for a brief period at IIT Madras and moved on to the Center for Environmental Studies, Anna University in 1992. He was a visiting professor at Chungam National University, South Korea during 2007. He has been teaching courses on environmental chemistry, environmental pollution control, and instrumental methods of analysis since last 27 years. He has guided 75 students for ME and MSc, 4 MPhil, 2 MS, and 15 PhDs. He has published 135 papers in journals and 90 in conference and symposiums. He has received several awards in national and international levels.
Welcome to the lecture series on environmental chemistry. We are discussing about aquatic chemistry, and today we are going to discuss one of the important aspects, that is namely colloids. During this talk, we are going to discuss about what is colloids, what are the types and important properties, especially electrical properties, then coagulation and how this coagulation used in water treatment. That is what we are going to see during this. We know what is suspension and what is a clear solution. Okay. If you add a salt like sodium chloride, it dissolves in water, completely going into the solution. This is solution, that is everything is soluble. And if suppose we take sand particle and put it in water, and if you mix it, definitely this is sand is not soluble in water, and this results in suspension. So, one is completely soluble, that is a solution, the other one is insoluble in water, that is normally known as suspension. These are the two things. Between these two extremes, that is completely soluble and insoluble, we have in between these two extremes, that is actually colloidal particles. So, these colloidal particles much smaller than can be seen with our eye, but much larger than the individual molecule. So, such type of particles are colloidal particles, and these colloidal particles play an important role in living system, transportation of mineral, and a number of industrial processes, etc. So, colloidal particle in water form colloidal suspension actually, but it is not visible to the individual particle, we cannot see with our naked eye. And we see the type of colloids is actually made up of two phases. One is dispersed phase, the other one is dispersed medium. The substance distributed as a colloidal particle is normally called dispersed phase, and the second continuous phase in which the colloidal particles are dispersed is called the dispersion medium. Particle is smaller and medium is a larger entity. And based on the phases and medium, we have 8 types of colloids, whether it is a gas, liquid or solid. There are 8 types. We will see quickly what is that. And based on nature, actually we have 3 types, that is hydrophilic or hydrophobic, especially with respect to water, and association type of soap or detergents, that is a micellar category. If you look at the nature hydrophilic, for example, starch, proteins are water soluble macromolecule, and they soluble in water give a solution that is actually hydrophilic, because starch and proteins like to dissolve in water. Whereas at the same time we have certain molecules or compounds or material like gold, clay, these all tend to be not soluble in water, mostly hydrophobic in nature, and these are all called hydrophobic type of colloids or salt. So, as I mentioned before, based on the gas, liquid, solid, we have 8 type of combination of colloids as seen here, except one phase, that is gas in gas is not possible, that is not actually not a colloid, but the other type of combination, for example, solid and solid is called solid sol, solid and liquid sol, solid and gas aerosol, mainly responsible for air pollutants, then liquid and solid gel, liquid and liquid emulsion, liquid and gas liquid aerosol, gas and solid solid foam, and gas and liquid foam. So, these are the 8 type of colloidal system we have naturally, except gas in gas. So, these colloidal particles, when it is formed, is possessing a very good stability. Naturally, they have a very good stability, and this is one of the important property of these colloids. The stability of the colloids is a prime consideration in determination of the behavior. It is involved in important aquatic chemical phenomena, including the formation of sediments, dispersion and agglomeration of bacterial cells, and dispersion and removal of pollutants such as crude oil from the oil spill, especially with respect to emulsion. This is happening, and for this the two main phenomena contributing to the stabilization of colloids are, one is hydration, the other one is very important one is surface charge on this particle. Charge on this particle, whether it is negative or positive, that contributes stability of this colloid, one of the very important thing. And the layer of water on the surface of hydrated colloidal particles prevents contact, which would result in the formation of larger unit. This is the one. So, hydration and charge on the colloidal things actually provides stability of this colloids. The surface charge on colloidal particles may prevent aggregation, since like charges particles repel each other. That is one of the important thing. The charge, surface charge on colloidal particles may prevent aggregation, since like charge particles repel each other. A repelling force is the main one, provides stability. The surface charge is frequently pH dependent. Sometimes around pH 7, most colloidal particles in natural waters are negatively charged. So, most of the colloidal particles in water are negatively charged one, and this negatively charged aquatic colloids include algal cells, bacterial cells, proteins and colloidal petroleum droplets all. And how they occur, these colloidal particle charge is very important, and there are three routes normally they can occur. Charge can occur a surface charge by chemical reaction at a particle surface. That is this phenomena, which frequently involves hydrogen ion and is pH dependent, is a typical of especially metal hydroxides and oxides. They, through chemical reaction, they occur charge. For example, you consider manganese dioxide, MnO2. This is one of the soil particle, and here depending on the pH, if it is acidic, the MnO2 molecule or hydrated MnO2 is a solid, water insoluble, that actually absorb this positively charged ion if it is an acidic medium and becomes a positively charged colloid. So, it is by adsorption of charges depending on the surrounding environment. Actually, in acidic medium the pH is less than 7, naturally the hydrated manganese oxide particles will absorb positive charge and becomes a positively charged colloids. Suppose this manganese dioxide is exposed to a alkaline medium, the pH is more than 7, and in these circumstances what does it? This is one of the hydrated water molecule will lose proton to the surrounding hydroxide ion OH things, that will pick up this H plus, and actually it becomes a negatively charged manganese dioxide. So, depending on the medium, surrounding medium, the manganese dioxide may form a negatively charged colloids or positively charged colloids. Usually water will be slightly alkaline, natural water, and mostly MnO2 may be available in the negatively charged colloidal particles. And if you look at the size of this colloidal particle, as I mentioned before, these are all very difficult to view the individual particle through our eye, and these colloidal particle size range from 0.001 micrometer to about 1 meter. That is 1 nanometer to 100 nanometer is a particle dimension of this colloidal particle. These colloidal particles possess certain special properties like optical property. One is Tyndall effect. If you pass sunlight through a true solution, you cannot see the particle, it will be appears a homogeneous medium. And suppose if you pass a light through a colloidal solution, you can see the particles. So, that is what one of the speciality of this colloidal particles. And these colloidal particles also can be viewed whenever dust particle comes through window, sometimes there is a sunlight comes through window, we can see some dust particle moving around. This is called Tyndall effect, peculiar to colloidal particles. The other property is Brownian movement, that is, these colloidal particles will be moving continuously, rapidly in a zigzag way, chaotic random movement and ceaseless movement executed by colloidal particles in the dispersion medium, that is also known as Brownian movement. The same light and the observation of light coming through a window, you can see the dust particle movement also. So, this is mainly why it is happening. This is due to the unbalanced bombardment of particles by the molecules of the dispersion medium. So, any dust particle is there, it will move in a randomly. This phenomena is called Brownian movement. And very important property is electrical properties. As I mentioned before, for the stability, the charge, whether it is positive or negative on the colloidal particle, is very, very important. This electrical property, that is the important property of the colloidal dispersion, is that all the suspended particles possess either a positive or negative charge, and the mutual force of repulsion between similarly charged particles prevent them from aggregating and settling under the action of gravity, and this gives actually stability of the solid. So, mutual force or repulsion of this same charge colloidal particle provides stability to this colloidal. A scientist Helmholtz explained or studied the electrical properties of this colloid and has come out a double layer. He viewed this colloidal particle charge on this particle as actually present as a double layer. It is called electrical double layer, and it is called Helmholtz double layer theory. That is, he viewed the surface of the colloidal particle occurs a positive charge by selective adsorption of a layer of positive ions around it, as I told you for manganese dioxide, and this layer attracts counter ions from the medium, which forms a second layer of the negatively charged ions. So, first one is positive one, adsorption, and the second surrounding is negatively charged. So, there are two layers. So, the combination of the two layers of the charges around a solid particle is generally known as Helmholtz double layer or electrical double layer, and this electrical double layer plays a fundamental role in the mechanism of electrostatic stabilization of the colloids, which is very, very important for this stability of this thing. So, the electrical double layer is a diagram clearly shows this. This is an actual particle surrounded by positive, by the adsorption positive ion, and the surrounding you can see the negative charge. So, there are two layers of a charge, one is the positive one and the immediate surrounding is a second layer, which provides neutrality for this, and this is phenomena is called electrical double layer theory. And closely connected with this electrical property, these colloidal particles possess a property called electrophoresis. That's we will see this is a colloidal solution, and we have two electrodes, positive and negative electrodes, and suppose we apply current, that is electrical potential is applied across two electrodes immersed in a hydrophilic salt. The dispersed particle move towards one of the other electrode depending on the charge. The movement of the salt particles enter an applied electrical potential is called electrophoresis or cataphoresis. Okay. So, this is a original thing, and suppose we apply current and this layer will move to this one, that is a negatively charged particle. Arsenic sulfide is a negative 1 and it will be attracted toward a positive electrode. This phenomena, when you apply current to this, is called electrophoresis. Other property is electroosmosis. In a particular salt, the dispersion medium carries an equal but opposite charge to the dispersed particle. Thus, the medium will move in opposite direction to the dispersed phase under the influence of applied electrical potential. Okay. And the movement of this dispersion medium under the influence of applied potential is actually known as electroosmosis. So, the electrophoresis particles will move, whereas in electroosmosis the medium will move in a proper direction depending on the charge on the applied electrode and the charge on the particle as well as the medium. These two, electroosmosis and electrophoresis, again is a special property connected with this colloids. And if we look at aquatic system, usually the individual cells of bacteria are colloidal particle in nature and can form colloidal suspension in water, that is the bacterial cells also. And many of the green algae in water are present as a colloidal suspension of individual cells of the particular algae species. Not only this algae and bacteria, even chemicals like iron and manganese oxide or their hydroxide also colloidal suspension with a particle from 1 to 1000 nanometer. These also will be present in the aquatic, naturally occurring aquatic medium as a colloidal particle. And not only this, even soil colloids and clay also part of this colloidal system normally occurring in nature. And in addition to this, organic humic materials, that is humic substances mainly derived from vegetation, is a main organic component of complex substances that have both OH and COH group, which becomes increasingly dissociated as a pH increases, and the charge also determines this. This also mostly behave as a negatively charged colloids. So, we have organic humic substances, some soil colloids and clay, and as seen before, iron and manganese oxide are the respective hydroxide, algae, bacteria, all this constitute naturally occurring colloidal in water system. Depending on their nature, we can go for what is called coagulation. All these impurities, suppose we want to remove from water, and we also do a engineering way, and we can coagulate, flocculate and remove the colloidal particles. So, what is this coagulation and flocculation, we will see, and what are the environmental application of this, and what are the natural thing. So, the aggregation of colloidal particles is very important in number of processes, including industrial process and aquatic chemical phenomena. That is, aggregation means combining small colloidal particles into a bigger particle, that is called aggregation. So, the ways in which colloidal particles of minerals come together and settle out of water are crucial in the formation of mineral deposit. Okay. The naturally occurring mineral deposit is because of this coagulation process of the colloidal particles. And the bacteria in colloidal suspension that occurs in the sewage in water, and a sewage treatment plant must eventually brought out by colloidal suspension to obtain a purified water. The bacteria in the sewage also purified through aggregation formation. And crude oil frequently comes out of the ground as a colloidal suspension in water, that is, colloidal particles of hydrocarbon must be separated from the water before the crude oil can be refined. All these things happens because of the process what is called coagulation, and ultimately settling out of flocculation, that is formation of smaller colloidal particles in a bigger aggregate thing. And this is also happening one of the natural way in the sediment formation in estuary. Estuary means where fresh water meets sea water, that point is normally we call it estuarine region, where usually sediment formation is high, and because of this coagulation nature, because usually natural water carries mostly negatively charged colloidal particles of natural origin, and sea water contains lot of sodium chloride. The moment both these meet at the estuarine point, the negatively charged colloidal charge are neutralized by the sodium ion, that ultimately leading to charge neutralization is taking place. So, small colloidal particles present in the river system leads to the formation of larger aggregate, ultimately sediment formation takes place estuarine region. This is because of coagulation of the natural colloids actually present in the fresh water by the sodium chloride salt. So, the coagulation flocculation of colloids is possible to force electrically charged colloidal particles to clump together and settle ultimately. Okay. Charges which provide stability by a repulsive force is made to neutralize and then leads to the formation of larger particles. And this is done by adding charged ions such as sodium ion and chloride ions. from sodium chloride, and these charged ions tend to neutralize the electrical charge on the colloidal particle. Ultimately, that leads to coalescence and allow them to come together, and this process is called coagulation. That is a process of addition of coagulant, mainly with a charge opposite of the colloidal particle, with the aim to destabilize the charge on this and destabilize a stabilized charge particle, breaking the dispersion of the colloidal things. Ultimately, the small colloidal particles come together, that is coalesces, and ultimately forms a larger particle and ultimately settle out due to gravity. And flocculation is a mixing process, usually called gentle mixing. This mixing technique that promotes agglomeration and assists in the settling of particles ultimately out of this thing. So, in some cases colloidal particles are caused to settle by virtue of bridging group called flocculants and join the particle together to form a bigger aggregate, that is usually long chain polymer with a positively charged nitrogen containing polymer materials are used for this purpose. So, the difference between flocculation and coagulation, how the way of mixing, as per the engineering term, coagulation, addition and mixing is a fast rapid process that actually neutralizes charges, whereas flocculation is a small gentle mixing that almost completes the process of smaller particles joining and forms a agglomeration and ultimately settle out of the solution from water. This is one of the important property when we want to destabilize or remove certain things, and this is a way. As I mentioned, this process actually occurs in nature also. Sediment, estuarine, deposition of sediments in the estuary region is one of the same process of coagulation. And there is a rule, Searle's and Hoddy rules actually give some points towards selection of the coagulant for the destabilization process. So, the precipitation of a colloid is affected by that of ion of an added electrolyte, which has a charge opposite in sign to that of the colloidal particle, and the effect of such ion charge increase markedly with the number of charge it carries. This is a Searle's Hoddy rule. It depends on what is the charge actually of the colloidal particle, and you decide what type of coagulant you are going to pick for its coagulation purpose. And if you look at it, we have all the salts, and if you see here from this side, the sodium ion is a monopositive, and barium 2 plus, and ferric, aluminum 3, all this. So, when you want to destabilize naturally occurring coagulants mostly negatively charged, and we can use either sodium ion or barium, ferric or aluminum. And similarly, suppose we want to destabilize positively charged colloid, we can take chloride or sulphate or even a tripositive phosphate also. So, it depends on this, but for naturally occurring water treatment, naturally occurring ones, negatively charged colloids, and aluminum chloride or alum is the most preferred choice for water purification. And for purification of water, drinking water, alum is used. Alum, that is aluminum double sulphate. When you add to water, it will undergo hydrolysis, form aluminum hydroxide salt. This aluminum hydroxide is a positively charged colloids. That means it will absorb positive or H plus ion, become a positively charged colloid particle, and this is what actually used for drinking water purification in water treatment plant. So, the water obtained usually from natural sources often contains bacteria and suspended impurities, mostly with the negatively charged colloids thing. And suppose if you add this aluminum hydroxide, which is a positively charged one, actually charge neutralization of the impurities will take place, and ultimately the repulsive force is removed and the small particles will come together and forms, or coagulation will take place and forms a larger sized agglomerated particles. That is what how all the suspended impurities of colloidal dimension by the addition of aluminum hydroxide how it is purified. Ultimately, everything settle out along with aluminum hydroxide and other impurities, everything settle at the bottom. And certain waters are difficult to coagulate by the addition of aluminum hydroxide salt. And such cases sometimes coagulant aid are added, and one of the naturally occurring coagulant aid is activated silica. This activated silica is a negatively charged colloids and possess negative charge. And suppose to this, if you add this activated silica, this interacts with the positively charged aluminum hydroxide cell, which initiate the process of coagulation, that is a charge neutralization will take place on this one, the negatively charged silica with a positively charged aluminum hydroxide. Ultimately, this is once this process initiated, other naturally occurring impurities which originally resist will follow this. A kind of nucleation is provided to undergo coagulation. All the impurities present ultimately removed from the water by the addition of coagulant aid. Sometimes if you have difficulty, this coagulant aid addition is also practiced. There are two type of emulsion. Naturally what is happening is oil and water type. Water dispersed in oil type of emulsion are available, and suppose you want to stabilize the emulsion as available in the some of the syrup or for medicine. By adding emulsifying agent, you can stabilize the emulsion where it is a oil and water or whatever in it. And suppose you want to break the emulsion, definitely again it is possible. The emulsion can be broken into constituent liquid by heating, freezing, centrifugation, all these things also possible. So, by subjecting to anyone, you can break the emulsion, which is a stabilized one, that is possible. Suppose you want to stabilize it, you can add emulsifying agent, both way it is possible. And another important application of this one based on the colloidal property is electrical precipitation. Electrostatic precipitation of smoke particles normally comes from chimneys of thermal power station. This dust particle comes out of the smoke is a problem, and this actually is a aerosol particle, that is a solid particle dispersed in air, again of colloidal dimension, and this also has charge. And by putting a electrostatic precipitator, that is using a positive and negative charge electrodes, anode and cathode, and these colloidal particles again subject to charge neutralization, and ultimately charges or dust particle actually present in the smoke is removed, and the air is purified through this electrostatic precipitator. So, this is also applicable for air pollution control also. This coagulation destabilization is applied, similarly oil and water, but the main important application is water purification. So, to conclude, colloids are important components of environment. It is present in water, air, everywhere, and the stability of this colloidal particle is provided by the electrical charge actually present in the electrode things, either positive or negative depending on the nature, and mostly in the natural water the charge available is negatively charged one. And making use of this, we can suppose if we want to remove this colloidal impurities, it is possible. That is what done in water treatment using alum, that is a aluminum hydroxide positively charged salt is used to sediment out the impurities via a coagulation process. So, this concept of coagulation is used for water treatment and wastewater treatment as well as in air pollution control. So, with this we come to the end of this session on colloids. Thank you.